Thank you all for sticking around. And this is part 2 of our in-depth conversation with John Titus regarding the Comey-Clinton emails. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, cronyism may be the dominant theme of the FBI reopening the investigation, because now we have had for some time an entrenched system of cronyism. And there are two characteristics of cronies that I'm sure most people have seen themselves. One is that they are extremely arrogant, and two, that their estimation of their own talent and their own intelligence vastly exceeds what's going on in reality. And those two characteristics describe what I call garden variety cronies. When it comes to banking cronies, the real criminals running the system, you can add a third characteristic, and that's that they think they're above the law. And with this latest FBI disclosure that they have some 650,000 emails, this may be the first major crack in the crony edifice. And by that I mean that what appears to have led to the reopening of the investigation is something that UMA did on Weiner's computer to somehow get 650,000 emails. The 650,000 emails weren't generated by Weiner and plus UMA together. Something else got 650,000 emails into that computer. And so what you have is a system of cronies where people who they wield power and they have influence and they have money beyond any real connection to their talent. And here it looks like UMA simply made a mistake and didn't know what she was doing with the email server, somehow connected into Clinton's home email server, and potentially through Outlook or through some other email connection service downloaded all of the emails from Clinton's private emails into Weiner's computer. That would certainly account or possibly account for 650,000 emails. So it goes back to the old thing straight out of the Bible. Pride goeth before the fall. And the crony system, inevitably, with the mixture of thinking they're above the law, vastly overestimating their own intelligence, this was bound to crack at some point. It just appears that it's cracked now at the highest levels. But I don't think, when I talked to you guys last time, I said I didn't think the FBI would lay a glove on Clinton, that she wouldn't even be charged with a misdemeanor. But this go around, it looks like she's in real trouble. Jim Comey did not reopen that investigation to plow over old ground. The old ground was, did Clinton mishandle sensitive national security information? And he determined the first time, no, she didn't. I disagree with that assessment. But that's not what this reopening is about. It appears that the FBI has discovered seriously worse infractions, and that would explain why Comey has taken a radical step of disclosing, reopening the investigation less than 60 days prior to the election, in less than 2 weeks. Something was in there. There was a monster in those 650,000 emails that led him to conclude, I had better disclose this now than wait until after the election, after Hillary is possibly elected, to say, oh yeah, by the way, I knew all about X, Y, and Z, which was going to terminate her presidency before the election. That's what this means.
How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, I think that, it could play, if she gets elected anyway, I think you're looking at a constitutional crisis, either generated by an ongoing criminal investigation of a sitting president, or potentially by pardons from President Obama during his lame duck term between the election and between Hillary's inauguration. I think it's realistic that Obama would try to pardon Clinton and pardon her team of everything. And if the infractions were serious enough, and they might be, you could have a political crisis on your hands or a constitutional crisis on your hands. I mean, we know from the we know from the episode with Richard Nixon that a sitting president can pardon a previous president even when there have been no charges leveled, and that's where we be here. It's going to take the FBI time to get through 650,000 emails. So there's any number of ways this could go, but this is a massive development. I mean, this is truly epic in a lot of ways, Shakespearean, because the arrogance is what's led to this. It was Hillary's arrogance that led to thinking she could set up a private email server and contravention of any number of national security laws and get away with it. And then to think that she could not find or delete or wipe all these servers, all these mobile devices, all these computers, all these email accounts, and get away with that and find out, oh, darn, I made a mistake, because it turns out that UMA inadvertently downloaded a serious number of emails from Clinton's private email server, and nobody saw it coming. But Clinton is in real trouble here. This could take her down for good.
You know, Rory and I were chatting a little bit earlier, and I find it. I mean, you know, I'm just in looking at history. Every corrupt leader is eventually, or every megalomaniac leader is eventually taken down by their own hubris. You know, that goes back to Caesar. And when you were talking about how she was operating as if she was permanently above the law, I find it ironic that the FBI is investigating this guy Weiner on child pornography suspicion, and all of a sudden this bombshell falls in their lap. I mean, I don't think anyone saw this coming.
No, but in a broad sense, there's a saying down south. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And Hillary Clinton at bottom is a hick. She's a hayseed. And she is absolutely, totally out of control and thought she could get away with it. And it's coming back to blowtorch her like no one's ever been blowtorched before. This is a slaughter that we're looking at here, because she's absolutely, totally out of control. This will probably do her in. But you're correct.
Rory also,
it is her own hubris that's taking her out right now.
Rory also brought up an interesting point here. You know, as this stuff all of a sudden gets laid bare for everyone, it'll be interesting to see to what degree the general public goes into denial or has cognitive dissonance take over, because I think it's very, very hard for people to see evidence that everything is as corrupt as the so-called conspiracy theorists have been saying it is. I mean, you were right, John, when you said this is going to blow a lot of minds as this unfolds.
Well, yeah, that's right. But if you look at this whole election cycle, I think a lot more people are aware of a lot more, that the system is a lot more corrupt than anyone first thought about maybe a year ago. I mean, there's a growing awareness of how bad things are at the top, that we really have a system that's run by a boardroom full of Caligulas and Neros. And I think that awareness extends at least insofar as financial matters are concerned, that payola and pay to play and quid pro quo is the order of the day. But I don't think people are ready to hear maybe some of the even worse things that go on. But I don't really think that's going to be an issue. I mean, no one really knows what's in those emails, but something's in those emails.
We can only hope that those emails have been moved to another server, or that WikiLeaks or somebody's gotten a hold of them and they're off-site so that they can't be bleach bitted at this point.
Well, that's another interesting thing. I mean, I looked at my own emails when I saw that I had 20,000. that was right around the time that my cloud was saying, you're over 5 gigabits now, gigabytes. You need to start buying more space. And I thought, well, okay, in a ballpark, to a ballpark figure, 650,000 emails is going to take up 100 to 200 gigabytes, which tells me that those emails aren't unique to Wiener's computer, that they exist somewhere else too, right? They're probably in a cloud somewhere, they're on a server somewhere. But, another astonishing thing about the first phase of the FBI's investigation was that evidence was destroyed.
Right.
So that's the fact that evidence was destroyed during the first investigation, and the fact that Cheryl Mills was allowed to sit in that deposition tells you that all is not well and all is not right at the FBI. But that's yet another indication that whatever is in the current batch of emails, this huge 650,000 email trove, is so egregious that no one, not even an advanced crony, could look the other way. It's that bad.
Be interesting to see how this impacts the election that's 9 days away.
Yeah.
There's a lot of speculation coming around now that this could end up postponing the election. Do you see it playing out that way at all, potentially?
Not too radical. The fact is, the thing that's going to bite the Democrats over this is that they went into this with full knowledge of what Hillary Clinton was all about, and they nominated her anyway, and really stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. And now they're going to pay for it. But if you're going to come in and say, oh, it's no fair to take the candidate off the ticket or to have an investigation, no, that's too bad. You assume the risk when you ripped off Bernie Sanders and put her in that position. You have no one but yourself to blame. Sorry about that.
Yeah, but couldn't Obama stop it or change it or postpone it or delay it?
Well, Rory, that's a good question because, one of the things that I complain about and write about and produce videos about is the absence of the rule of law and the danger of having a criminal system. Because once you dispense with the rule of law and you decide to have a system of cronies, all bets are off.
Right.
Right? And that's a real problem. The other problem with it is, criminals given that kind of power, there's no boundaries. What on earth is there to stop them from perpetrating greater and greater crimes? I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see the future. I mean, anything is possible, but I think delaying the election or postponing the election on this absurd pretext that this came out of the blue, when in fact everybody knew that Clinton was a deranged nut to begin with. I just don't see that happening. They made their own bed. They got to sleep in it. I'm sorry.
Within the Patriot Act, or I'm sorry, the Unpatriot Act, there is a clause that allows for the sitting president to change the rules of the election. And the sitting president doesn't actually have to step down if there's a, quote, declared emergency, end quote.
Threat to national security.
Threat to national
and there are
security.
any number of other unconstitutional laws that are sitting on the books as a result of the fact that the rule of law is gone. We decided that we don't need the rule of law, that we prefer the system of global cronyism, and this is what we have. But is a political problem. Forget the legality of it. The political upheaval over postponing the election. I mean, that's the kind of thing that gets people into the streets.
I think they're headed to the streets either way.
Maybe, maybe not, but you certainly don't want to provoke them into the streets.
Yeah, it would be kind of a kick in the pants, wouldn't it?
I mean, it's you're waving a red flag at a bull. You don't have to. I mean, if I'm a criminal banker and I'm sitting near the top, at this point, knowing that there's there's a Loch Ness monster in these emails, my move is, you know what? Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, Hillary's getting slaughtered. I mean, if I'm a top criminal banker at this point, given what is likely in the offing with Hillary, I think you pack it in and say, we can't stick with this dying nag of a candidate. She's become too much. She's a liability to us now. She's got too much baggage. Our better move is to cut cord with her, cut her loose, and go to work on Donald Trump. It's not like the bankers don't have an in with Donald Trump. They do. He's appointed at least two. He's appointed at least two people from Goldman Sachs.
Right.
He got John Paulson on his team. This guy is no angel. He's just better than the devil.
That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put to encapsulate the whole situation between Trump and the Trump-Clinton election.
Yeah, well, top of my head. So I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? We're all crystal balling here, but somebody knows what's in those emails, and it includes people at the FBI, and it now includes an Article 3 judge who took a look at the FBI's proffer of evidence to decide, yes, it's go ahead. I'm going to grant you a warrant to look through Weiner's emails, the 650,000 emails, even though it's less than the election is less than 2 weeks away, and even though it's a Sunday.
Yeah, I was just going to say, not only was it a judge who granted the search warrant, he interrupted his Sunday golf game.
I mean, how did they get him on the line? Now, the other interesting thing in this is that supposedly the FBI agents got a hold of Weiner's computer around October 3rd, and supposedly Comey only found out about it on Thursday, a few days ago. I believe the former. I believe the October 3rd part. I don't believe that Jim Comey just found out about this on Thursday. I think that he had to really think carefully through what he was doing to decide to reopen an investigation with less than 2 weeks to go before a presidential race, before a presidential election. That's amazing.
Well, and John, like we were discussing earlier, I think that for Comey to come up with the original decision that he didn't find any intent. I think there was a lot of political pressure put on him from Loretta Lynch, others at the Justice Department. Clearly, Eric Holder's been involved in this. And I'm sure from the Oval Office itself, there was pressure put on him to close down, to sew up the investigation and explain why there isn't anything wrong. He didn't find any wrongdoings there. So my guess is he had to think long and hard about reopening this thing and making darn sure that he had all his I's dotted and his T's crossed.
That's true. The other thing that's true is, Jim Comey is going to take heat like nobody's ever taken heat before. And he knew that when he did this. That's how bad it is. And two, you'll notice President Obama isn't backing the story that Comey did this to tilt an election.
I was going to ask you about that.
No, he's already you're seeing signs that Hillary's going to get thrown under the bus. The sitting president's saying, no, he didn't. The FBI director did not do this to influence the election. I don't buy that. So right away, you have a disagreement between the sitting president and Hillary Clinton. That does not bode well for her at all.
I found that interesting that he's all of a sudden backpedaling away from her.
Yeah. The people in the know seem to think there's a real big problem here. And remember, Ortel, the professor from MIT, did sort of a cash flow analysis of the Clinton Foundation and found that the claims of the people who donated to the foundation, were about $600 billion, but yet the foundation was reporting that they had received only $500 billion. That's a $100 billion discrepancy. How do you explain that away? Where's that money? Where did it go? What is it being used for? There's just no telling what is in those emails. And God forbid, if Uma accidentally downloaded the entire Clinton server, you don't know what's in there.
It's funny that these people are backing away from supporting Hillary, who have been just at, I mean, they have been staunch supporters right up until
Right.
just a
They're,
couple of days ago. I mean,
but they
that just screams that the puppet masters know something.
right. And in other words, they know that Hillary has crossed the line from pig to hog, and it's slaughter time, and they're getting out of the way.
This is a prime example of you walk into your New York City apartment and turn the light on in the kitchen, and the cockroaches scatter. That's exactly what this is.
That's exactly what it is.
Could be. I mean, but
They're all running for cover, and they're going to figure out how to cover their own ass, because there's probably a lot more people implicated in what's on that laptop than just Hillary's closest people, like Uma and Donna Brazil.
You think? Just look at the list of donors to the Clinton Foundation.
Well, now notice how Harry Reid is out there piping up pretty vocally about this is a political stunt, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully this will bring down guys like Pelosi and Harry Reid as well.
Well, Harry Reid doesn't really. First of all, Harry Reid he's in on all of this himself. But second, he's not coming back into office next term. True? I think he's done.
No, he's done. Yeah, but I still want to see him prosecuted.
Yes.
You don't enter Congress with nary a pot to piss in a failed legal practice, and emerge a senator who's worth tens of millions of dollars without being a complete crook.
Well,
and that's what happened to him.
Except that Congress is allowed under the Stock Act to engage in insider trading. I mean, if you give somebody in Congress the right to engage in insider trading, you might as well just give them a printing press.
I don't think it was insider trading that generated his wealth, because you get taxed on that. I think it was pay to play.
All I'm saying, Dave, is that there are legitimate ways, legal ways, for people in Congress to make money while they're in Congress. I don't think it's right. I don't agree with it. I disagree with the law, but it is the law that they're allowed to engage in insider trading. So
insider trading isn't how these guys generated their wealth, because to generate the kind of wealth that they have, you have to start with wealth. Harry Reid did not have a pot to piss in when he was first elected to the House.
You are probably correct, but that is by no means certain.
Well, maybe now we can open up investigations into all these people.
Yeah, I would love to see Harry Reid and Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi and Senator Feinstein. I would love to see those four and McCain all thoroughly investigated.
You know, one of the big moments in the election was during the second debate when Donald Trump, responded to Hillary. She said, "It's a good thing people like you aren't in charge of the Justice Department." And he said, "Because you'd be in jail."
Yes.
That was a big moment. So let's see how Trump does with following up on this, should he be elected. And let's get the election first. But the next week is going to be really interesting, because it's not only that the FBI investigation has been opened, but also remember there's another WikiLeaks disclosure coming out there. And if they've saved the best to last, who knows what's coming from that too. But these disclosures are coming. There's so many of them. It's almost impossible to keep track of them, especially given their severity.
Interesting times. Well, should we dive further into the realm of speculation, or leave it there?
Well, I think this has been fantastic. John, I happened to see, I think it was posted on Zero Hedge, or maybe it was a tweet somewhere. Someone made the comment that even the social media and the blogosphere is not really covering this deeply and thoroughly and what's involved. And so I think you're going to shed some major league light here for a lot of people, and we appreciate your time.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what's going to come, but my spider sense is that this is huge.
I would have to agree.
Good. But time will tell.
You could kind of tell from Hillary's comments right after this whole thing broke, you could kind of tell that she was worried. And that's the first time I've seen her appear worried.
And there's also her team tried to bait Comey into making a legal error by saying, well, why don't you disclose what you have now? Because if he does that, then the warrant is at legal risk of going out the window, and it all gets tossed. So the fact that she's making legal maneuvers tells me there's trouble here. She's in real trouble.
We'll see how well the rule of law applies once as this thing begins to unfold in earnest. If there is in fact a rule of law, which we know that there are only shreds of laws remaining at this point. So,
well, I suspect a lot of us are going to go to bed every night praying before we go to sleep that those bleach-bitted emails are on this laptop. And I have also feeling Hillary Clinton is going to spend the next several nights not sleeping. She's got to be sweating bullets.
The bigger risk isn't that the emails that were deleted or wiped are on the server. A lot of them probably are. To me, the even greater risk are emails that reflect the fact that those things were deliberately wiped. Because then you've got a layup for an obstruction charge. And obstruction is what put Martha Stewart in prison. It wasn't insider trading.
No, John, because she said under oath those emails didn't have anything on them.
Right.
I mean, isn't that perjury?
Well, perjury is kind of a complicated charge. That's why I'm saying obstruction is a much better charge because it's far easier to prove.
Treason is not that difficult to prove, and from the understanding that I have, if there's 650,000 emails, that's going to be uncovered and pretty clear, in my opinion. I mean, you cannot talk to foreign dignitaries and foreign officials and discuss transacting money and discuss what's going on within the State Department with other foreign leaders and that not be considered treason. And that's exactly what she was doing.
Could be. It could be.
That's what I want to see. I want to see charges of treason brought against her, period. I don't care about perjury or any of this other stuff. I want treason. I want her to pay for the fact that there are 4 people at the Benghazi embassy that are dead because of her. They were murdered, flat out murdered because of her. Period.
You don't know what's in those emails, but there could be something in there that reflects badly the real story on Benghazi, because we still don't know that story.
Exactly.
And if that story is laid out completely in the emails, it could get real ugly real fast.
Well, there were supposedly more than 600 emails sent from the Benghazi embassy to the State Department requesting more security, claiming that they are under attack, claiming that we are in serious danger, and completely ignored.
And if those emails are in that trove, and they might be,
I pray to God that they are. We
don't know what's in there. All we know is that Comey reopened the investigation, and he didn't do that lightly. Something bad is coming.
Well, my blood's starting to boil.
It almost seems like it's something that if he did not disclose it and it came out later, he could be under the gun.
That's a distinct possibility. He made that assessment that it's more important for me to go against FBI guidelines by disclosing this close to an election than it is for me to wait. And so the people who think that this is all about Uma are badly mistaken. This is about Hillary. That's why he did it.
Well, John, we really appreciate your time on this. I know you're busy getting your next video expose written and put together? What are you working on?
A follow up to my last video on really where the control of the Justice Department is coming from. So in the last video, we saw basically Goldman Sachs exonerating itself, but that's not the end of the story.
So you're saying there's a deep state or a higher power that controls the Justice Department, even though the Justice Department's supposed to be the highest order of law enforcement in this country. You're saying there's something behind that that's even more powerful.
Yeah, it's one thing to ignore crimes that have been perpetrated. It's another thing to ignore crimes that have been perpetrated because you are following other orders. And I'll just leave it at that.
Don't make us wait too long for this, because I can't wait to see it.
Exactly. Well, hopefully you'll have that up and running before too awful long, John. But we certainly appreciate all your time, and we'll follow up with you here before too long and get your take on the next set of unruliness coming out of the government.
The next round of lawlessness.
Exactly.
Lawlessness and disorder in the U.S.
That's it. Well, we've been speaking with John Titus, and you can find all of his work over at Best Evidence on YouTube. And John, once again, thank you for all your time.
Thanks for having me, fellas.